And at that day the slain of Yahweh shall be from one end of the earth even to the other end of the earth. They shall not be lamented or gathered or buried. They shall become refuse on the ground.
The dead will be so numerous, burying them will be a hopeless task. Nor will this be a local phenomenon. The carnage will be strewn worldwide.
Wail, shepherds, and cry. Roll about in the ashes, you leaders of the flock. For the days of your slaughter and your dispersions are fulfilled. You shall fall like a precious vessel, and the shepherds will have no way to flee, nor the leaders of the flock to escape. A voice of the cry of the shepherds and a wailing of the leaders to the flock will be heard. For Yahweh has plundered their pasture, and the peaceful dwellings are cut down, because of the fierce anger of Yahweh. He has left his lair like the lion, for their land is desolate, because of the fierceness of the oppressor, and because of his fierce anger. Jeremiah 25:33 through 38.
The word oppressor here, obviously referring to Yahweh, is an unfortunate translation of the Hebrew yana, which means destroyer or one who treats violently. Yahweh is angry, not oppressive. The shepherds, of course, are the world's political leaders. Each one of them will know that there's no way out. Their sins have come back to haunt them. Not only will they not be able to keep their positions of power, the one thing every politician wants, but they now realize that they'll be lucky to get out of this mess with their lives. What's happening?
Behold, the whirlwind of Yahweh goes forth with fury, a continuing whirlwind. It will fall violently on the head of the wicked. The fierce anger of Yahweh will not return until he has done it, and until he has performed the intents of his heart. In the latter days you will consider it. Jeremiah 30:23 and 24.
A continuing whirlwind? What does that mean? You were hoping for something a little more specific? How about the words of Yahshua?
And as it was in the days of Noah, so it shall be in the days of the Son of Man. They ate, they drank, they married wives, they were given in marriage, until the day that Noah entered the ark, and the flood came and destroyed them all. Luke 17:26 through 27.
No more business as usual. No more behind-the-scenes maneuvering. No more politically correct injustice. The time of Yahweh's fury, the day of Yahweh, has finally come. But what's happening, you ask? The unthinkable is happening. Upon the first successful test of the atomic bomb on July 16, 1945, the man most responsible for its development, Robert J. Oppenheimer, quoted the Hindu demon god Vishnu, "I am become death, the destroyer of worlds." 7 years later, presidential candidate and Council on Foreign Relations member Adlai Stevenson intoned, "There is no evil in the atom, only in men's souls." Demons and mortals alike know what's coming, or at least they did at one time. But speaking for us mortals, we have forgotten to be terrified. We have progressed from paranoia and backyard bomb shelters into Cold War stalemate, in which the concept of mutually assured destruction, MAD, kept the two superpowers from pushing the button, to a new state of post-Cold War denial. At the moment, most people are willingly ignorant of the fact that the threat of nuclear holocaust didn't go away just because Russian communism collapsed. When the Berlin Wall came down, the whole world breathed a collective sigh of relief. The Cold War was over. But the weapons, many of them, remain intact, and human nature remains evil. The official score at the time of this writing is, Russia holds 22,500 nuclear warheads, down from a high of almost 45,000. The United States, 12,000 warheads. France, 450. China, 400. United Kingdom, 380. Pakistan, 18. India, 18. Those are the nations that admit to having nukes and the numbers of nukes they admit to having. In addition, Israel is believed to have up to 100 warheads, and North Korea, who withdrew from the Nuclear Proliferation Treaty in January 2003, has announced that it too is a nuclear power. Iran's nuclear program, ironically, slowed down somewhat after the Islamic fundamentalists seized power in the late 70s. Seems it's even harder to get things done under Muslim repression than it is under secular repression. But their quest for the ultimate weapon continues. Libya has given up trying to build its own bomb, but it is both willing and able to buy its way into the nuclear clubhouse. Iraq, in case you didn't notice, has been forced to put her nuclear aspirations aside for the moment, a factor that increases the chances that she will align herself with her fundamentalist neighbor Iran when the chips are down. The region's wild card is Saudi Arabia, a signer of the NPT with no atomic weapons development program of its own. What do they have? 120 Chinese-built CSS-2 ballistic missiles topped the CIA fears with Pakistani-built nukes, ostensibly for defense against Iran, aka Magog, which helps explain Saudi's initial diplomatic protestations mentioned in Ezekiel 38:13. They've always been wary of Iran's aggressive behavior. We need to be aware that Saudi Arabia, under the al-Saud royal family, practices its own perverse brand of Islam, almost a cult known as Wahhabism. The Wahhabi sect is an equal opportunity hater. The mantra that pours unabated from its mosques and universities is death to Jews, Christians, Hindus, and Shiites. It is no fluke that 15 of the 19 9/11 hijackers were Saudis. Although our politicians routinely kiss this devil on the lips, the Saudis have been accurately characterized as Talibans with oil and a good PR company. We are told that 3 former Soviet states, Kazakhstan, Belarus, and the Ukraine, have relinquished their nuclear arsenals, and 4 other nations who previously had nuclear weapons programs, South Africa, Algeria, Brazil, and Argentina, voluntarily shut them down in the early 90s. Even if all of this is true, and I'm not suggesting that it is, that leaves Russia with almost twice the nuclear arsenal of the rest of the world combined, with delivery systems second only to those of the United States. And to put things in perspective, John Mattei of Greenpeace reports that as of the turn of the 21st century, quote, the United States alone has spent over $3.4 trillion on preparing for nuclear war since the Second World War, and continues to do so at a rate of nearly $30 million a day, unquote. Thus, I would submit that it's not a particularly smart move to create insoluble problems for Russia in the unrestrained post-Holy Spirit world. Yet that's precisely what Gog will be doing by attacking Israel, and what the Antichrist will be doing by overrunning the Middle East in retaliation. With that in mind, let's return to Ezekiel's narrative.
And I will send fire on Magog, and on those who live in security in the coastlands. Then they shall know that I am Yahweh. Ezekiel 39:6.
We have already seen how Gog's armies will fall upon the mountains of Israel. This is different. This is Yahweh's judgment upon the homeland of Magog, as well as on other nations, although
those who live in security in the coastlands
is a maddeningly imprecise phrase. I believe it implies global war. If those people are living in security, then they are not at war yet. That in turn means that they are outside the Magog Federation. The war, just as it did in 1914, is spreading to those nations who once thought they were safe. Sending a fire on Magog could, of course, mean Sodom and Gomorrah-style divine judgment, but a far simpler interpretation in light of our current geopolitical predicament is that this phrase means nuclear warfare. Magog's opponent, the Antichrist, has decided to employ tactical nuclear weapons against those who allied themselves against his protectorate, Israel. But why would he do this? He has to know how threatened Russia will be by his actions, and what her possible reaction might be. More to the point, by this time the armies of Magog will have already been destroyed. Their corpses lie rotting on the mountains and fields of Israel. Magog has been defanged. Her military capability has been annihilated. Dar al-Islam is no longer a threat. So why attack Magog's homeland? Because he has to. Look at the big picture, the spiritual picture. The only reason the Antichrist is there in Israel is because he is trying to present himself as the Jews' Messiah, the Savior of the world, the Son of God. As we shall see, his whole raison d'etre is to make people worship him. But the defeat of Gog's army within Israel is clearly not the result of his actions, but of Yahweh's.
Surely in that day there shall be a great earthquake in the land of Israel. Every man's sword will be against his brother, and I will bring him to judgment with pestilence and with bloodshed, and I will rain down on him and his troops, and on many peoples who are with him, flooding rain, great hailstones, fire, and brimstone. Ezekiel 38:19, 21, and 22.
Yahweh has chosen as weapons a massive earthquake, confusion and fratricide in the Muslim ranks, floods, hailstorms, and fire and brimstone. The list consists of what people usually call natural phenomenon, or acts of God, things that are all in some way beyond the capabilities of conventional combat. Thus, the Antichrist can't plausibly claim credit for destroying God's army. Of course, he will anyway, plausibly or not. But what about fire and brimstone? That's not your ordinary run-of-the-mill freak weather occurrence. We just got through explaining,
and I will send fire on Magog,
as nuclear war. Isn't this the same thing? It could be descriptive of atomic warfare, but it almost certainly isn't in this case. Yahweh will not allow his land to be polluted in this way. And this isn't just a theory of mine based on a love of Israel and a healthy dose of wishful thinking. Biblical descriptions of events subsequently taking place within Israel clearly preclude nuclear holocaust. So what is fire and brimstone? Fire could be anything from conventional artillery to napalm to lightning from the heavens, or, of course, the literal burning of brimstone, which I'll discuss in a minute. Isaiah, if you'll recall, described Yahweh's weapon as
the flame of devouring fire.
Elijah had called down fire from heaven to consume the overconfident soldiers of the idolatrous Samaritan king Ahaziah, who came to fetch him. This was a fact well known by Yahshua's disciples.
Now it came to pass, when the time had come for him to be received up, that he steadfastly set his face to go to Jerusalem, and sent messengers before his face. And as they went, they entered a village of the Samaritans to prepare for him. But they did not receive him, because his face was set for the journey to Jerusalem. And when his disciples, James and John, saw this, they said, Lord, do you want us to command the fire to come down from the heaven and consume them, just as Elijah did? But he turned and rebuked them and said, You do not know what manner of spirit you are of. For the Son of Man did not come to destroy men's lives, but to save them. Luke 9:51 through 56.
The first advent of Messiah was not a time of judgment. That time, however, is coming. Note that Yahshua didn't deny that the power to send fire in judgment was his to wield. Yahweh apparently has no problem putting fire wherever he wants it.